one idea plus another idea plus another idea gives you a new idea, because this is the thing. I mean, there's no such thing as something which is completely original, right?
Yeah.
But everything is a fusion. It's a synthesis of what's gone before, but with a new fresh twist or something added to it, which takes us then to a new, exciting, different place. And especially if you're talking in business, one of my great sort of exciting riffs is on transsectoral, multidisciplinary thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think we've sort of gone past, I think, the specialist model now. And I think the people who are going to rule the future are going to be the T-shaped generalists. Where, you know, when I say generalist, you still need to have a domain skill, if you like, a deep domain experience. But I think the people that have the broadest vision, in terms of that V-shaped vision and a broad, you know, bar on their T-shape, these people will rule the world in the future, because they'll be hopping across domains in real time, searching for solutions. As you're having a discussion, you can say, hey, you know, you might be in the construction industry, but you know that in the aviation industry, they solved this problem before, and they did it by doing that. So in the aviation industry, that method of working or thinking or doing is well established and is mundane, because that's the way we think and work. But if you bring that idea into the construction industry, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, you're an innovation guru, because it's new to this sector. And
Yes.
that is entirely valid. You know, I think people put way too much pressure on themselves to be completely original. And I say, you know, any advice I can give would hinge around that. Say, nothing is completely original, right? So if you can beg, borrow, steal, reshape, you know, asterisk next to steal, see patent lawyer for details, right? But it's just about synthesizing. But if you can slam those things together in a new context, in a new industry, in a new sector,
yeah,
that is entirely valid. It's a completely valid idea and completely valid innovation.
I'd actually probably even push it a step further and say that it's preferable. And my thinking is that if it has that logic to it, you know, we've been doing this for 100 years, but actually this other industry's been doing this for the last 20 years, and it's shown, you know, incredible performance. So we've used that technology. That's a believable, easy to understand kind of comprehension. So when it comes to marketing that business, you can explain that story. If it's true, right, or I'm not sure it is, as you say, true innovation, but if there's something that's, you know, new to that market and new to any market, then that's a harder thing to kind of explain and harder to get adoption, I would say. I mean, I can't think of a personal example where I've really had something really extremely innovative, but as I've got closer to that, I have found it harder to explain the logic for its, you know, it's why it should exist in the world.
Well, that's the thing. You've touched on an interesting point. I mean, my formative background was the advertising industry, and as a young punk in the advertising industry, I'd march into clients' offices, kick the doors down, and say, "Look, this has never been done before. It's new. It's revolutionary. It's going to change the world."
Yeah.
And clients would be, "Oh my God, there goes my promotion." Basically, it scared the hell out of them. It scared the living proverbial out of them, because uncertainty. Nobody likes uncertainty. You know, when you come back to mindset, creativity mindset, innovation mindset, uncertainty is the deal breaker in all of this. So how Hollywood does it, how they do it in Silicon Valley, is what they call the high concept pitch. And the high concept pitch gives your audience, first of all, the reassurance that, hey, you know, we've got a leg, 1 foot in the familiar here, and then I'm going to add a new twist, and that's our new business idea or our new model or our whatever it is. So, you know, for example, I love to use Hollywood examples because we all know the movies and things like that. When James Cameron, the director of Titanic, was pitching that movie, he basically pitched it with the pitch line was, it's Romeo and Juliet on a ship, right? Now, that's all you need to know about that movie, because we all know and love Romeo and Juliet. People have been taking that to the bank for 400 years. So there's reassurance. It's like, oh, it's a winner. We know it's a winner. It's social proof. It's all these things which give us the sort of, the calm down chemical of, this is going to be okay. We're going to be successful here. We're not going to go too far wrong. And then the twist that they add is, it's Romeo and Juliet on a ship. Oh, okay. So it's going to be a love story, commercially successful, but with a different setting. That's the creativity you brought to the table, was with the ship bit. So yeah, that's what we call a Hollywood high concept pitch, and Silicon Valley use it all the time. I mean, if we look at some example like Airbnb or Uber. So basically, I think it was Uber. Uber came out and said it's like Airbnb for cars, right? So it's like, all right, we understand, and this gets to your point. If you've got a completely new, different, fresh idea, people can't grab onto that. There's no familiar frame of reference. It's just stuff floating in the ether, and there's nothing that I feel reassured by. There's nothing I can tangibly grab onto and make sense of. But if you use that sort of thing of the familiar, but with the twist, people are already 80% towards your idea. You've dropped them off 80% away from the finish line. And
that must be the way, I mean, I don't know, but neurologically, that must be how the brain works. I mean, it's a labyrinth of intertwined webs, right? And so if we try and put in something there which isn't connected to anything we already know, it's just going to kind of live in isolation. And literally, I guess the brain doesn't know which boxes or folders to put this thing in. So it just kind of rattles around and goes, reject, reject.
Exactly, which gives us the sort of flight mechanism. We want to run away from that because it makes us feel uncomfortable. If the idea doesn't fit into a pre-made slot, more or less, even with sometimes just with a little bit of force, just to put it in there, we want to run away from it because it gives us cognitive dissonance. That's the fancy word for it, right? It makes us feel uncomfortable. It makes us nervous. We lose what I was talking about before, which is the reassurance. So absolutely, that's something we need to be on our guard with. So this is where something like using analogy comes in, right?
I love analogies.
Uber is like Airbnb for cars. So okay, we know this thing. This is like that thing. Okay, great. Now we get it. We've got a frame of reference. And coming back to the book I was talking about before, the Pivot Power book, I think, well, what is pivoting like? How do I help people to understand what a pivot is? And what it brought back to me most was my childhood experience in sailing. Right, did a lot of sailing as a kid and growing up, and do a bit of sailing now. It's this whole thing. If you're blowing down, the harbor or the river or wherever you're doing your sailing, you're going in this direction. Then at some point, either the wind changes, the wind speed changes, the wind direction changes, or you run out of track. You need to then change direction. So to me, if I'm to explain what pivoting is like sailing, because you need to change the angle of your sail to harness and harvest the best wind. See, so when I use an analogy like that, does that help you to understand? Oh yeah, I see how my business is going in this direction, and the analogy of the wind is obviously income and customers and all that stuff. So without getting technical, I'm helping you to understand my idea by explaining an idea that you already are familiar with. And so
I guess we're doing the same thing again, aren't we? Because we know this exists over here, it's not so hard to believe that similar philosophy could work also over here. So we're effectively doing the same of changing industries, I guess, that analogy. That's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And so when you talk about analogy and simile and metaphor, my English and Latin teacher, Ronald Brooks, would strike me down with lightning to hear me say that analogy, simile, metaphor, they're all the same thing. Something is like something else. Let's move on. Let's not get caught in the semantics. But this is something which I wish I'd known in the first kind of 20, 25 years of my creative career. The power of analogy to help people to understand our ideas, to help us to articulate our ideas. Because here's the interesting thing, there are so many great ideas. The world is full of, everything around us is an idea that somebody presented to somebody else, somebody approved it, signed the check for it, and it went into production and entered into our lives, yeah? But the question is this: how many great ideas, and this is just gut feel, how many great ideas never went into production? Much better ideas than the things that we see around us that we oohing and ahhing over, but they didn't go into production because some probably backroom guy, some backroom geek, some nerd didn't have the presentation skills, didn't have the articulation skills, or caught his boss on a bad day, on a hungover Monday morning or something, try to put the idea under his boss's nose, and the idea didn't get up. And therefore that idea went back into the bottom drawer and got lost in time.
Yeah. I think I really liked your little Titanic story. And
I got more.
So I suppose this is half statement, half question. So for me, so I come up with ideas. I want to test those ideas as quickly as possible, preferably without throwing lots of money at it, at least in those early days. And what I will then focus on is, can I come up with the line? So, the line for Titanic, I think you said, it was Romeo and Juliet on a sinking ship. That sounds like it's a pretty powerful line. In broad terms, people can kind of get that. And if we can't distill it down into a line, and I have to say, I don't think I've ever found that easy. I think that's a real skill. It's something I have to work at. I'm not sure it's my core skills, but I kind of enjoy the challenge. But that's a great way of testing a concept. Is that true?
You mean coming up with a sort of summary line, elevator pitch sort of thing?
Elevator pitch, one-liner to at a high level summarize, if it's a new business or a new product or service, what is it and what does it do? Because if you can't do that, then maybe it's too convoluted or...
Exactly. I think we need to learn from Hollywood here. Yeah. When they're hustling deals in Hollywood, that's how agents work. They will take that sort of 5, 6, 7 word strap line. It's Romeo and Juliet on a ship. The agent will take that to lunch and you say, right, after the first course, you say, right, what do you got? You'll say, I got this. The first idea we've got is this. It's Romeo and Juliet on a ship. And the guy go, yeah, I like that. Send me more on that. If it doesn't work at that level, 100 pages of extra stuff is not going to make it work. It needs to capture us at the highest level. We need to instinctively understand it. Yeah. Now, the corollary, that's a hard word to say, corollary of that is another studio pitch, which was, it's Bambi in Africa with lions. And the studio's like, Bambi in Africa with lions? That sounds messy. It doesn't sound like it ends well for Bambi, frankly. Now, they said, let's work that a bit. And they did. They went away and this was pitching Lion King. They then had another go and they said, actually looking at it more, it's King Lear with lions. And they looked at the characterizations of King Lear and thought, still not getting that. And then they came back after more thought and said, it's Hamlet with lions. Now, what's interesting, if you know your classics, if you know the story of Hamlet and the characters and the dynamics of the characters in Hamlet, and you look at the Lion King, you can almost map bit by bit which character is who and how they act and how the story pans out. And, you know, that turned into a really classic Hollywood story, and just been remade as well. So, yeah, that's it. You know, and your point, if you can't articulate it, you're not going to sell your idea. So, you know, actually, Warren Buffett came out recently and said, if you want to increase your value as an employee, as an entrepreneur, as an entrepreneur, you've got to learn communication skills. You need to learn to articulate your ideas. And that was Warren Buffett saying this. Increase your value by 50% is what he reckons is the value of just being able to articulate your idea. Because what's going on up here, you as the inventor, you were so excited. Hey, I cracked the idea. I've got this. All your audience is hearing is some half-assed elevator pitch, which may or may not be pushing the right buttons and touching the audience's handles. So there is a real art and a real science, and yes, lots of neuroscience, which goes into framing that, articulating it, making sure that you're taking people along on that ride for you. And that's why something like an elevator pitch is so important, because if you can't excite people at the top line, you know, they're not going to, you know, the executive summary must get them. Yeah. You're not ever going to give them the chance to wade through 100 pages of why your idea is so great. Right? Yeah. And, you know, you look at programs like Dragon's Den, Shark Tank, all these things. You've got, you know, sometimes 5 seconds, 30 seconds maximum. I think the science shows maximum of 37 seconds to make a killer first impression. People have decided whether they're going to invest in your idea or not within 37 seconds.
Okay, that's a tough
there it
tough
is.
bar.
There's your challenge,
definitely.
yeah.
So,
yeah, so get your little elevator pitch right, yeah.
Yeah, I totally accept and agree. It's such an important task. Say for me personally, it's something I have to work really hard at and can always be better. I'm not sure I've ever felt like I've got to the finish line, and I think I've always, even a business that's a few years old, I'm still kind of.
I'm not sure if there is a finish line.
Yeah, maybe not. So I just want to kind of refer to your book a little bit. So the Pivot Power book. So just a little bit about that. Are they tools that people can use to consider pivots themselves? Are they examples of pivots that other people have done for inspiration? Just tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Just very quickly, the book I actually did as a demonstration of how we need to be thinking and acting in this sort of crisis situation times. It was like, all right, everybody needs to be pivoting now. Yeah. So in a way, it was me doing a pivot by myself as well, because, you know, instead of all my face-to-face workshops, okay, I've got more time on the ground now. I'm doing some Zoom workshops, etc. But I just wanted to sort of do my own little pivot. And I set myself a 1-week challenge. From inception of the book, hey, you know, maybe people need a book on pivoting, to actually being on sale was 1 week. So, yeah, thank you, sir. Now, the thing is this: it embodies so many lessons of what I call, I guess, the lean methodology. Right? If it's a complete failure, it just costs me a week of my time. Right? If it's a success, it is perhaps the best week I've ever spent in my life in that sense. What I'm hoping to do is get, you know, the tool set, the mindset, the tool set, and the skill set. Let's talk about those 3 things. Mindset, tool set, skill set, into people's hands as quickly as possible, because I think around the world right now, this is what people need, because they're in this quandary. Like going along this way, suddenly, boom, there's a roadblock. There's a tree across the road. Help, where do I go now? So to answer your question, I identify 20 different types of pivot. And I think that alone is probably eye-opening for people to go, wow, really? There's 20 different types of pivot? What are they? And so you go through those. I've put examples next to each one. So each of those 20 types of pivot might have 3, 5, 7 examples of big companies, small companies, having put that into practice successfully. And that's the key to it, successfully, right? And one of the things about this that it highlights is when you look at some of the biggest brand names in the world, you know, whether it's IBM, whether it's Airbnb, whether it's Amazon, just about every single one of them. In fact, I can hardly think of a company that is what it started out as.
Mm-hmm.
Something has changed in all of those companies along the way. Either their customers have changed, their technology's changed, their markets changed, their methodologies changed, something's changed. They've all pivoted, yeah. Now, the book ends, having outlined all of that, with the toolbox, which is, okay, right now, you're probably sitting around your kitchen table thinking, shit, how am I going to pay the rent? Here's some immediate things that you can do. Here's how you can start to match up what does the market need now. So, you know, it's really written in terms of a crisis condition because that's kind of where people are in as we're speaking currently. But it's applicable anytime. And I mean, I make the point, and I hope I make the point well, pivoting is an ongoing process. It's not a one-off thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at PayPal as we know it today is literally plan J. Plan A fell over B, C, D, E. PayPal, as we know that business model today, is plan J.
Yeah.
Now, soon we're going to have plan K for PayPal because eBay have just taken them off the exclusive preferred payment partner roster. So what's in store for PayPal next? Yeah. But yeah, there is a toolbox, and I think there are 5 or 6 tools there where people can actually just sit down there and do their own little brainstorms in terms of how do I move my company forward from here? So it's really a how-to, and yeah, fairly foolproof because I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't use the word dumbing down, but I like to bring the science and the tools to the people so that
it's
people
usable,
can,
right?
It's usable, it's relevant, it's usable, it's practical.
Yeah.
Because, you know, to me, there's no point being a sort of highfalutin academic if your stuff is A, too boring to read, and B, even if you do read it, you can't really understand it, and then C, you can't see how it's relevant to you, either as the entrepreneur, a solopreneur, an intrapreneur, or even a CEO of a massive corporation. So I think it's a really, down-to-earth, practical, hard-hitting toolbox, which will hopefully get a lot of people onto a new path to riches. Yeah.
Brilliant. So look, I would really recommend. I've not read the book yet. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it. Looking forward to getting my hands on it. And this series is all about innovation, investigation, and initiation. And this book sounds like the dream for that. It's going to give you some tools to get you started, to sort of broaden, to use your vocabulary, sort of the V. I think you said the V look or the T look to broaden the way you look at things. To come up with those ideas, come up with those 100 ideas, to pick the best one and then run with that. So, Stuart, it's been an absolute joy to have you on this call. I actually hope we can do something again in the future, because I had actually the only problem I had during this call was I had like 100 questions and things coming up for me, and I was like, oh, I forgot about that one, and which path do I take us down? Because it's such a big area, and I know you've got sort of lots of knowledge there. So. Yeah, just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure. And also I'll include some links. Yeah. So I'll include some links and stuff so people watching this or listening to this can explore further, and also check out Stuart Lloyd for more details. Get their hands on a copy of the Pivot Power book. Stuart has written other business books as well, but that's his latest book. So get your hands on that book. Is there anything you want to say before we sign off?
I just hope that we've delivered value. I've enjoyed a really engaging conversation, especially, you with your sort of design first kind of lens on the world. And absolutely. I just hope that we've delivered value for people today in terms of somebody just grabbing something out of this conversation, which has sparked them, given them inspiration to something, and, just give them the springboard to the next great thing. And let us know what that next great thing is, because I love to know how it touched people. So thanks so much. Appreciate it, Simon.
So that was the podcast with Stuart Lloyd, or Stu Lloyd, as he prefers to be called. As I think you'll agree, Stu really does know about innovation, which is why he's been working with some of the top companies, global companies around the world, and gets flown around. Usually he's on a flight to Singapore, Australia, London, wherever it may be, to deliver these workshops. And these workshops and skills and techniques are often only given to the big companies that can afford consultants like Stuart of his level to go in and consult with them. So real joy to just scratch the surface of some of the techniques and ideas that Stuart has about creating innovation. And if you're in a position where you need to come up with different products or services, or even a different business, then his book and the Pivot Power is a great place to start. I don't own the book. I've yet to get a copy of the book. I can't wait to get my hands on one. I know there's going to be some really great stuff in there. I know Stuart very well for years, and it's clearly a subject he's very, very skilled in. So I think that would be a great place to start. And I guess one of the things I just want to sort of point out as we wrap this up is that just watching or listening to this podcast, that alone isn't going to do it. Right? I mean, Stuart gave himself a deadline of producing, writing, and delivering a book in just 7 days, and achieved it. And I think that's the kind of mentality I would like to kind of urge you. So it's about taking action, right? Maybe you haven't got it perfect, but let's give it a good shot. So whatever you need to start that, it's going to take you forward. Maybe it's the book. Please really go for it. I also know that Stuart's actually building an online sort of training course and program. I know because I'm actually working very closely with him to build that. And at the time I record that, we're still working on that. But by the time you listen to this or watching this, maybe that's already out. So if so, I will include some additional links to that program. I know that's going to be around the area of killer questions. And basically Stuart has put together these really insightful kind of, provocative questions that inspire new ideas and innovative way of thinking. So I think that would be a really great program as well, so that you can, perhaps want to consider getting your hands on that as well. That's it from me. I hope you found that of use. Please do get into contact. Love to know what you're doing, how you are, adding innovation to your business, products or services. That's it from me. Over and out. See you on the next one. Bye for now.